My name's Nick. I'm an alcoholic. Hey. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks for the invite. And I always say it's a privilege and an honor to do anything in AA and to be asked, invited places. It's an amazing thing. And that was not the case at the end there. Nobody wanted me around. I was not welcome places. I was handed and given ultimatums and lists and stuff I needed to do and stuff I needed to abide to in order to be around the family and friends, and I could not follow those rules or guidelines, and off I went. And it's so funny, you know, my sponsor, he said, record yourself so we can put it on YouTube and dress nice and stuff like that, and I said, okay, and it's like, we're supposed to come in here and like have our ego deflated, right? But then you asked me to come here and talk about myself for, you know, X amount of time, so like, what am I supposed to do here, right? Just explain, you know, just what it was like at the end. For me, I'm gonna go with that. I have a home group. It's in Doylestown on Saturday night, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group. We meet at 8:30. Food and fellowship's on 8 o'clock. I've been an active participant in that home group for the entire length of my sobriety. My sobriety date is April 19, 2016, and I did not pick or choose that date. God saw fit. Got into my seventh rehab, and the journey began. There was a change of heart. The big book talks about having a change of heart. And that happened to me, a spiritual awakening in that very rehab, that something had changed internally, that there was willingness and hope that maybe this was truly over. And I was introduced to AA in 2009, so for 7 years, I fought this thing with the most strongest will that I had. And it's dumbfounding, it's baffling, because that same willpower they talk about, I could use that willpower to not do AA, to not find God, to not receive or ask for help. And it didn't understand why I couldn't use that same willpower to just not drink and drug. And it just it confused me and my family. Why can't you just stop? And my dad would just say, why can't you just stop? He's a military guy. He said, just stop. And I remember you know, Nancy Reagan, just say no, right? If that was enough, I wouldn't need this book. I wouldn't need you guys. I wouldn't need God. I wouldn't need AA if that was the case. If I could just, you know, put the plug in the jug or stop drugging and just be good. You know, the problem has always been sobriety. When I stop drinking and drugging, I turn into even more of a mess. You take away my solution, you take away the bottle, I'm left with myself, the nerves, the nervousness, the anxiety, the fear, the depression, all that stuff that I compounded or you know, covered up with drugs and alcohol for many years. And I didn't know that. I just thought that I was partying, right, and it was fun. So I labeled my home group, my sponsor and stuff like that. And I said my first rehab was at Living Grin in 2009. My parents gave me my very first intervention. I showed up there was a stranger in the living room, this guy Jay Yautz, an awesome person. And I took it as an insult. Like, how dare you come into, well, it was my sister's house, it wasn't my house. And they invited me over for lunch, which was strange because they weren't inviting me anywhere. And I knew something, I know, you know, the plan was afoot, you know, like something was going on. And I took it as an insult, you know, and I had an attitude and had this my guard up and said, you know, just leave me alone. And they're crying and weeping and begging and pleading with me to you know, receive this help. And I'm like pushing it away because I got this figured out, right? You know, I can stop anytime I want to. I just don't want to, right? That's what I tell myself, the delusion. And off I went. So for a couple of days, I ran until the wheels fell off, and I finally said, okay, I'll go to this rehab. And you know, I checked, you know, got me into it, got me there, and I had no insurance. You know, my life was a wreck, so my grandfather volunteered to pay for it. God bless him, and you know, out of his own pocket. And I went in there with an attitude, you know, the food's no good, the beds are this, that, and the other. Just had this complete attitude of you know, just unthankfulness and just you know, I was just spoiled, right, and just so ungrateful. So I'm going through withdrawal from 20 years of drinking and drugging. I mean, everything under the sun. And you know, I'm sitting there with my father in the break room, shaking and going through it. And he said, you know, he looked at me and said, "You did this to yourself," you know. And I hated him for it, but it was so true. You know, this is all the problems of my own making, and I chose to put these things in me and do this and party this way and let it, you know, get to a certain level of complete, you know, defeat and also where it was purely the party was long over. It was purely you know, maintenance drinking and maintenance drugging. Like, I had to drink and drug or I'd be sick. So, you know, they ask you who was at your last party, and you know, I look back, it was just me. You know, I was all alone. The isolation they talk about, the loneliness, the isolation, the disconnect from everybody. I'd burned every bridge that I knew of. Friends, they'd give me stipulations on staying at their place, and I'd always mess that up, and that's just how it went. So, and again in that rehab, people were talking about doing this big book stuff like that, and I see the steps on the wall, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is it, this book and these steps, like on the window shades, and I just couldn't put it together, and at first I started reading these steps, and I'm like, yes, no, like looking at it and picking and choosing, and I'm like, there's no way, and I see the word God, and I'm like, I see what's going on here, and I was anti-religious. I was raised Catholic, but I just didn't see the connection or talk about the inadequacies that I thought I had with God, and the relationship I had was just purely the song and dance, the prayers, and just going through the motions, going through the religion class, and just because I was kind of just there because I had to be. And we talked about it last night. When I was a kid, I was like a good little Catholic schoolboy. I would sing and say the prayers, and I liked it, and music. And as I got older and I developed my own opinion, it was no longer cool to do church. Cool to pray in front of somebody. And we talked about it like this kid used to pray so diligently in class, and that we'd all make fun of him because he was praying from his heart and actually cared about prayer and stuff like that. And we, as kids, we'd poke fun and make fun of him. So that's where the attitude began. In middle school, I started disconnecting from that and joking and making fun of people like that. So again, back to the rehab, and I couldn't believe it. And one of the most famous pictures in AA is the man on the bed, and Came to Believe is also what I heard it was called, and it's Bill Dotson and Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob, and I saw that picture, and I said, I don't know about those two guys, but I know about that guy in the bed. I can relate to that guy. People coming to me when I'm sick in bed and are pleading with me, would you get help? And I'm skin and bones and dying, and I'm like, no, I'm good. Just can I get $20? That's how I rolled, and that's just how it went. I don't see myself, and I saw a picture not too long ago of what I looked like at the end. About 120 pounds, skin and bones, gray. I mean, just horrible. And I had to look at it a few times to even recognize myself, almost unrecognizable for my own self. And that's how low and how bad it got. The pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization, physical, mental, spiritual. You name it. It was I hit that bottom. So only through pain and suffering that willingness came. And again, in that rehab, I told my dad, one and done, and that's it. I don't want to ever feel this way again. This is it, and I had no idea what I was truly up against, how strong this thing was, the grip of alcoholism, the grip of drug addiction, how strong this really was. I thought I could just, get separated and start working, get my finances back in order. I had no idea what it was truly all about, and they kept telling me, make recovery the most important thing in your life. So I took it as, just go to meetings and don't get a job. So that didn't work out well when I got out. So I could use that as a scapegoat. Well, they told me just to go to meetings, not worry about my finances, and everything will just work its way out. And they're like, well, don't do that. And my parents I got them right where I want them to be because I manipulate, and I word twist, and I tell them well, this is what they told me to do, and it's not working. And slowly I didn't follow any of the suggestions. I told me get to a meeting, right? To get a home group, get a sponsor, tell them you're new, you need help, you're dying. I was too full of fear to go to a meeting and put my hand up and say that. I went to a meeting in Philadelphia. There's 100 people there. There's no way I was putting my hand up and saying, hey, I'm new, I need help. I wanted to act cool and act like I knew what I was doing. That's just what I do, right? I try to fit in. And I got a sponsor right away, and we sat in his car and we talked about God, and we read a little bit, and then he handed me a little packet of some work to do, and I looked at it and I said, this inventory and stuff like that. I'm like, why do I got to do that? I'm the victim here. Don't you know how people treated me my whole life? And I always got the raw deal and the short end of the stick. Why should I have to do this stuff? And that went into my little pile of rehab books, and I had no idea again. And that's as far as my sponsor relationship went for my first bout at this. And so fast forward, just 7 years of that around AA, detox, rehab, rinse, wash, repeat. Just over and over and over the cycle. I couldn't seem to break it, and I eventually came to a point where I accepted that life, that I was going to be either going to go on to the bitter end like this or considering killing myself. And I had written the suicide note and everything, and I didn't have the courage to do that, thank God. And that was one thing that I'm glad I wasn't able to do. But I could not stop. I couldn't see why. I couldn't just stop. And although I kind of wanted to, but I just wasn't ready to fully commit, and I couldn't tell you why. It was my journey, and it took as long as it did. But that doesn't have to be the case for everybody. If you're new and you're here, and it doesn't have to go 7 years. It doesn't have to go that long. if you really, come here and you're willing to do this thing and ask for help and try this thing, and they tell you, give us 90 days, and if you don't like it, we'll gladly refund your misery. So I can relate to that one, but I never made it 90 days. I never was fully, completely abstinent. I always doctor shop and had to have some kind of Band-Aid or some kind of fix to ease the blow, because again, like I said before, my problem is being sober. Sobriety is my problem. I suffer when I'm sober because I have no solution. I have no substitution. I have no sufficient substitute the book talks about. And nor did I want it, nor did I even consider taking this stuff and running with it and applying it to my life. So I'm going to read one little paragraph here out of more about alcoholism. Most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics. No person likes to think he is bodily or mentally different from his fellows. Therefore, it is not surprising our drinking career has been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove we could drink like other people. The idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. The persistence of this illusion is so astonishing, many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. And it goes on to say here, we learned we had to fully concede to our innermost selves we were real alcoholics. So I remember when I was trying to get sober, in and around AA, mostly just around, a guy came up to me and asked me if I had a big book, and I said no. So he handed me the wallet size, the pocket size big book, and in the front he wrote, "The owner's manual for the real alcoholic." And I had no idea what that meant. And I looked at that book and I tried to read. I just couldn't put it together, man. I couldn't associate with what they were talking about in the book because I was so closed-minded, and I'd read stuff like that and I couldn't comprehend. Again, I'm not fully sober, and I'm trying to understand this stuff, and I can't even read between the lines to explain what I truly suffer from. And but I'll never forget that guy. He really tried to help me and reach out to me by doing that and give me my first big book. And I like to share that with people about what he wrote about being a real alcoholic. That I'm the hopeless variety, like alcoholic. That sobriety, absence alone is not enough. I wish it would. I wish it was. And in my case, it's not. And I tried just being separated, and like I said, I suffered even more. And I wondered why, my life wouldn't be getting better. I think I stopped drinking and drugging. Everything should be okay now, right? I can get back to my life, get back to doing whatever it is I want to do, and I'm getting worse and worse as it goes along in the rooms of AA, or around the rooms of AA. Unwilling to really, tell anybody what I'm really going through and what's going on, and look at this stuff, and I suffered for many years. So, like I said, my sober date, I didn't pick that. Towards the end there, I had been in a recovery house and got a little taste of sobriety. I did a lot of fellowshipping, and I still wasn't fully convinced, I think. And what had happened was I signed a lease with this woman, and it was in a recovery house, and she said, minimum of 90 days, boom, 90 days I'm out of here. I already got big plans. And that was the beginning of me trying to, control and manage my life again. So 90 days is up, and on the outside I look like I'm doing pretty good. I'm working and get the weight up, and I am making meetings, 0 step work, 0 sponsor, just fellowshipping and trying to make meetings every day, and that was basically it. So I move out and move in with my sister. She takes me in. All is forgiven, right? And of course I didn't make any amends, didn't do any of that stuff. I didn't do any of the step work, but she just she loved me unconditionally, and she wanted to see, try to help me. She's always tried to help me. She's always one of my biggest fans, and as soon as I move in there, I disconnect, and I got guys in the recovery house calling me and asking me what's going on, where are you at, and I'm like, I can't even answer the phone, right? And I don't even see what's happening. I'm the last one to find out. And it starts small. It starts out with smoking a little weed, and then it's well, I already did that. I might as well go a little heavier, and before not too long, I'm on the most horrible run. And the book even talks about it always got worse. It never gets better. It always gets worse and harder for me to reel it back in and ask for help and to surrender again. Until I did, and something had changed. I never got myself a bed at a rehab. It was always somebody begging me to go or finding me a bed. And for once, I picked the phone up and said, do you guys have a bed at Penn Foundation? And they said yes. And so that was something that was different for me that I never did before. I actually was seeking out seeking help on my own. And so I go to my parents who, were, crying hysterically and begging me. And I'm like, I'm going to go to rehab tomorrow. Of course, it's never right away because I got to get loaded. I got to go in there to a certain level of comfort. That's how I always roll. And so I went, and my dad, he said, here's your, you had all my finances. Here's your card. Here's your keys. You're an adult. We can't stop you. I hope you don't die tonight. And hopefully you get to that rehab tomorrow. And I said, I'll be back in the morning, and I want you to drop me off. I don't want to have my escape vehicle waiting in the parking lot just in case I change my mind when I'm there again. To have my car not there is a good idea. And so that was it. So I check in there, and again, something had changed internally. I don't know what it was. I really feel like God touched me, and I did have what I call a spiritual experience in that rehab. I shed my skin and talked to one of the counselors who I usually wouldn't do, and I started really kind of doing a fist step with this woman, and she confided in me and told me her story, and she gave me her 5-year coin. She's like, I don't want to see you anymore. You've been here enough. I really feel like you seem different this time. Something's going on with you, and here's my 5-year coin. And when you get 5 years, I want you to call me and give it back to me. And so I did call her and try to give it back to her, and she didn't return my phone call. So I now have that justified resentment against this woman. But yeah, she meant well, and I hold on to that coin. I cherish those things, those little things, and I like all that memorabilia and stuff like that in AA. It has a place in my heart. So even in that rehab, I had just a different attitude. I no longer was fighting against the rules and like the stuff they were asking me to do. I just said okay, and that was the greatest thing you'd ever say in AA is okay to whatever they ask you to do in these rooms. And so I got out of there. I stayed as long as they let me. My insurance, they covered another 28 days somehow, and they said, this is it. You've utilized all your county funding. This is the end. And so I said okay, and so I know like my world was getting smaller, and my chances of this were getting smaller and smaller. So I stayed to 28 days, and I took the suggestion to go to a recovery house. I went back to that same recovery house with a different attitude, and ended up staying there 17 months, and off my journey began. I really just threw myself into AA. I got a sponsor right away. He encouraged me to do a 4-step like really quickly to uncover and discard and get through these fears and resentments and everything like that. And I remember after I wrote that 4-step, I sat there and we did our 5th step, and I went and took my quiet hour, and I really feel like I was truly like starting to do AA. I never had done that before. I never experienced that, and to actually do some work, and put the pen to paper and do this work, which I'd never done before. I just kind of floated. And so we talk about the complete surrender of step 1 and the unmanageability of my life. Not only with the finances and material stuff like that, but the unmanageability of my soul and my emotions and my, and I talk about that complete, Bill talks about complete bankruptcy, and that's where I had reached, was the complete bottom of the emotional bottom, was the true bottom that I had hit, and thus began the pain and suffering was my motivation. The suffering was basically it. I no longer wanted to suffer, and I was willing to do whatever was asked me for once, and go through the step process and really throw myself into service. And again, my sponsor's a complete service nut, and just encourage me to do as much service as possible. So I'm signing up for chairs. I'm doing what I'm asked to do. I'm getting asked to speak. And I remember the first time someone asked me to speak, I said, "What do I do?" He goes, "Just get up there and cry until they ask you to leave." Thanks a lot for your help, sponsor. So that was good. I like that one, and that was it. But he's a good guy, and he gives me good direction, and that's what it's all about. So I love laughter, and it's important to laugh. I can laugh at myself today, and that's a gift of sobriety. Is if you're not having fun today, they say you're doing it wrong. But hey, everybody does it differently. But I know if I'm not going to have fun and laugh, I'm not going to stay here, right? If I'm doom and gloom and just kind of fighting till midnight every day and just like suffering in the rooms, I'm not gonna stay here, man. I need relief. I need ease and comfort that's brought by a drink or a drug. So if I don't have, like I said, a sufficient substitute, I'm going to go back out. I'm going to seek that out. So, I love the book so much now, and I never understood it, but in studying it and going through it, it's been incredible part of my life. I truly love the literature. I love the book. I try to the best of my ability to practice and adapt these principles in this book and apply it to my life. And so far, it's worked pretty good for the past like 7+ years. I've done my best to really practice this thing and apply it to my life. and it just gets better and better. And I'm afraid to like take my foot off the gas really and see. I don't even want to test the waters to see what happens if I pull back, if I get complacent, if I get ease up on this thing. And so the insanity of the drink, in step one, and talking about being restored to sanity by finding God, and I truly think that it's so important to find a relationship with a higher power in God. And I love this saying: there's going to be a time and a place in your sobriety that there's the only thing between you and a drink or a drug is going to be your relationship with God. I talk to my sponsor regularly. I am I'm pretty make meetings regularly, but I'm not sponsor reliant. I'm not person reliant. I'm not meeting reliant. I'm God reliant, and that's what I've been taught to do. And everything else is awesome stuff too. But it's for me, it's God is everything or nothing. And prayer and meditation is a huge part of my life, and I started doing that in early recovery and saying these prayers they'd given me, and continue to do that and to pray for others. No longer it's about me anymore, right? It's about praying for others. The selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of our problem. So from now on, I got to continually pray for others, and it feels good to constantly add people to my list and think of others and reach out to others, because what to do, it gets you out of my own head. And that's the place I don't want to be, right? They say, stay out of there unchaperoned. I like that one. So I try to do that one as well. And I got no business being stuck up there, and I can easily go there. But to have these gifts in this, the prayer and meditation, to start my day with the quiet time and practice this stuff every day. And so we talked about the fourth and fifth step a little bit. I took my quiet hour, went and took the quiet hour and reviewed my inventory. And was I thorough? Did I leave anything out? Was there anything good? Is this, am I building a foundation with sand and mortar? Is it solid so far? And looked at it, and then called my sponsor. I said, look, I went into this quiet hour and I fell asleep. And did I do it wrong? And he said, no, your mind went quiet. You found peace, and that's awesome. So I'm like, okay. And I really felt like something was changing internally. I'm like, there's something. Those damn AAers were right. This whole time I couldn't believe it. Man, they were right this whole time. So again, you don't know until you know. And so I took that fourth step and went out to make these amends. I had all the names on there already. It's great. They have the list. When you make your fourth step, your eighth step's already made pretty much. And reviewed it. And I bounced stuff off my sponsor before I made these amends and made sure they were appropriate and I wasn't hurting anybody before I did it. And again, the amends are not for me. They are for the person. That's up to them to forgive me. And it was nice because I really didn't have to talk too much. I just left it in their court and gave it to them and let them just go. And they've heard enough out of me for my whole life with the I'm sorries and the apologies. So that was a different approach. I just said, how can I make it right and let them talk. So that was the beginning of the amends process. And some were great. Again, and not have any expectation what I was taught. It's not for me anymore, right? So I just go with this attitude of whatever happens, happens. And, some were amazing. Some were like whatever, or just kind of like humdrum. And some people didn't really want to talk to me, and that's okay. It's not for me. So, I don't have any super profound, experiences with or things that happen with the 9th step. A lot of them were just wreckage that I just try to clean up, and a lot of financial stuff like that. And the point was that I was willing to do whatever, any and all of them. If nobody was hurt in the process. I love the 10th step, to have that on a daily basis, to pause when agitated, to avoid retaliation and argument. Now, does that happen all the time? I do that to the best of my ability, to bite my tongue, to restrain a tongue and pen. If I said what I wanted to say whenever I wanted to say it, I don't know how that would go. But again, this is something that A has taught me. I don't always have to be right. I don't have to say what's on my mind. I can pause and breathe and pray and just think to myself, is it really important what I'm about to say? Do I need to lash back? Do I need to even get in the ring with this person who wants to argue and fight or start something like that? And it's worked pretty good. And to have that on a daily basis is an amazing thing. It's a gift, really, to have that pause button, because Lord knows I needed it, because I can use that as an excuse. This is how you treated me, and here I go again. I'm going to use it to an excuse to pick up a drink. I talked about prayer and meditation, and it talks about every man, woman, and child, there's the fundamental idea of God, right? So I know, and every time I was jammed up or in a bad place or bad situation, I went to God. Every single time. Cop in the rear view, sick on the floor, I'm begging to God, right? Every single time. And the beauty of it is that God doesn't make too hard of turns for those who seek Him out. So I was taught to seek God on a daily basis, search for God, and my relationship has grown so much throughout the years. The depiction I had when I came here was that punishing and cruel God that sit and judge me, and if I didn't repent, I'm going to hell or purgatory, and I'm going to suffer. And the beauty of it is that it's our own depiction of God, and whatever works for you. I have a loving God who's just waited for me this whole time, that forgave me this whole time, and just wanted me with Him and wanted me to be near to Him. So I'm going to read one more thing, and then we'll shut it down from Bill's story. I just love Bill's story because I can relate to the progression of his alcoholism, the insanity, the hostage he took with Lois, what I did to my family. So my friend had emphasized the absolute necessity of demonstrating these principles in all of our affairs. Particularly was it imperative to work with others as he had worked with me. Faith without works is dead, he said, and how appallingly true for the alcoholic. For if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. If he did not work, he would surely drink again, and if he drank, he would surely die. Then faith would be dead indeed. And with us, it's just like that. Thanks. My name is Nick. I'm an alcoholic.